The summer sun bathed the Blake mansion on Long Island, New York, in a golden light that seemed to bless the event that was about to take place. Cordelia Blake, with her red hair tied up in an elegant bun, was overseeing the final preparations for the party to welcome the newest member of the family. Her son, Nathaniel, Nate Blake, walked nervously through the main hall, adjusting his navy blue silk tie. "Nate, honey, relax," Cordelia said, placing a comforting hand on her son's shoulder. "Today is a day of celebration. You and Olivia should enjoy every moment." Nate nodded, a tense smile on his lips. "I know, Mom. It all feels like a dream. Sometimes I'm afraid to wake up." The sound of heels echoed down the marble hallway, and Olivia Blake entered the room, radiant in an emerald green dress that highlighted her brown eyes. In her arms, wrapped in a white silk robe, was little Jasper, just 2 weeks old. "Hello, my loves," Olivia greeted, her voice soft as velvet. "Are we ready for our big debut?" Nate approached, kissing his wife's forehead and gently caressing his son's cheek. "You two look perfect," he whispered, his voice tinged with emotion. As the guests began to arrive, the hall was filled with laughter, lively conversation, and the clink of champagne glasses. New York's elite were present, politicians, businessmen, celebrities, all eager to meet the heir to the Blake empire. When the moment arrived, Nate stepped up to a small podium, holding a glass of champagne. Silence fell over the crowd, all eyes on the young millionaire. "Friends, family," he began, his voice firm but charged with emotion. "Today, Olivia and I have the honor of introducing you to our son, Jasper Everett Blake." He paused, gazing adoringly at his wife and son. "When I look at him, I see not only our future, but the future of everything we've built. I see hope, love, and endless possibilities." Olivia joined Nate. Jasper nestled in her arms. Camera flashes lit up the room, capturing the moment for posterity. "To our son," Nate raised his glass, "and to the love that brought us here." The crowd applauded, and guests came forward to greet the family. Among them, a middle-aged woman with gray hair and piercing eyes stood out. She watched Jasper with peculiar interest. "What a lovely baby," she commented, her voice carrying a slight southern accent. "He reminds me so much of someone I met a long time ago. An old friend of yours, perhaps." Olivia frowned, confused. "I'm sorry, but I don't think we've met. Are you?" "Oh, forgive me," the woman smiled, holding out her hand. "I'm Vivian Caldwell, an old friend of the Blake family. We haven't seen each other for years, but I couldn't miss this very special event." Nate, who was standing nearby, heard the comment and approached, a shadow of concern crossing his face. "Mrs. Caldwell, what a pleasure to have you with us. I hope you're enjoying the party." Vivian nodded, her eyes never leaving Jasper's face. "Oh, yes, dear. It's a wonderful celebration. Your son is truly unique." As the evening progressed, Vivian's comment echoed in Nate's mind. He watched Olivia interacting with the guests, her smile radiant, but something nagged at him. A seed of doubt had been planted, and he couldn't ignore it. Later, when the last guests had left and the mansion was silent, Nate found Olivia in the baby's room, nursing Jasper to sleep. "It was an amazing night," Olivia whispered, placing the sleeping baby in his crib. Nate nodded, but his mind was far away. "Liv," he began, hesitantly. "That woman, Vivian Caldwell, what did she mean about Jasper looking like someone?" Olivia turned around, surprised. "Nate, she was probably just being nice. You know how people are with babies, always looking for similarities." "Yeah, but..." Nate paused, struggling with the words. "She seemed so, specific." Olivia moved closer, placing her hands on her husband's face. "Baby, don't let random comments ruin this moment. Look at our son. He's perfect, and he's ours." Nate forced a smile, hugging Olivia. But as they stood there, watching their son sleep, the seed of doubt continued to grow, threatening the happiness that had seemed so perfect just a few hours before. The morning after the party, Nate Blake woke up with a feeling of unease that he couldn't explain. The summer sun streamed in through the windows of the Blake mansion's master bedroom, but not even its warmth could dispel the coldness that had settled in his heart. Olivia was still sleeping soundly beside him, exhausted after the events of the night before. Nate watched her for a moment, admiring the soft curve of her neck, the dark hair scattered over the pillow. How could he doubt her? And yet, silently, he got up and walked to the baby's room. Jasper was sleeping peacefully in his crib, small fists clenched beside his face. Nate leaned over the crib, studying every detail of his son's face. The eyes, although closed now, he knew were a deep shade of brown. The skin, a shade darker than his own. The hair, a different texture. "Is everything all right, love?" Olivia's soft voice surprised him. She was standing in the doorway, wrapped in a silk robe, looking at him with a mixture of love and concern. Nate straightened up, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just checking on our little miracle." Olivia moved closer, wrapping her arms around Nate's waist. "He's perfect, isn't he? I can hardly believe he's ours." Olivia's words, although spoken with love, caused a twinge in Nate's chest. "Liv," he began, hesitantly, "about what that woman said last night." Olivia pulled away slightly, frowning. "Nate, please, let's not let one random comment ruin our happiness." I know, Nate sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's just that, well, you did that DNA test before the birth, right? What exactly did it show?" Olivia's face paled. "What do you mean? What did it show?" "Nate, are you really questioning Jasper's paternity?" "No, I don't know," Nate replied, his voice a mixture of frustration and confusion. "It's just that, look at him, Liv. He doesn't look much like me, does he?" Olivia took a step back, her eyes filling with tears. "I can't believe what I'm hearing. After everything we've been through together, you doubt me like this." "I'm not doubting you," Nate tried to explain, but the words sounded empty even to himself. "I just want to understand. Why didn't you show me the test results?" "Because I thought we trusted each other," Olivia exclaimed, her voice rising. "I thought our love was stronger than that." Jasper's crying interrupted the discussion. Olivia immediately turned to the crib, taking the baby in her arms and soothing him with soft words. Nate watched the scene, feeling simultaneously guilty and confused. Part of him wanted to hug his family, to forget all his doubts, but another part, an insistent voice in his mind, continued to question. "I'll get breakfast ready," he finally said, leaving the room. In the kitchen, as he prepared the coffee, Nate couldn't stop thinking. Vivian Caldwell's words echoed in his mind. "He reminds me so much of someone I knew a long time ago, an old friend of yours. Perhaps. Who could this friend be? And why did Olivia seem so reluctant to show him the results of the DNA test?" Lost in his thoughts, Nate barely noticed when Cordelia entered the kitchen. "Good morning, darling," she said, immediately noticing her son's troubled expression. "Is everything all right?" Nate hesitated for a moment before answering. "Mom, do you know a woman called Vivian Caldwell?" Cordelia looked surprised by the question. "Vivian Caldwell?" "Yes, she was an old family friend." "Why?" "She was at the party last night," Nate explained. "She made some strange comments about Jasper." Cordelia studied her son's face for a long moment. "Nate, honey, what's really bothering you?" Nate felt the words escape before he could stop them. "What if Jasper isn't my son?" The silence that followed was deafening. Cordelia moved closer, placing a hand on Nate's shoulder. "Son, love doesn't always follow the rules we expect. Sometimes it surprises us in ways we can't immediately understand." Nate looked at his mother, confused. "What do you mean?" Cordelia sighed. "Maybe it's time you learned some truths about our family, Nate. Truths that can help you better understand the present." Meanwhile, in the baby's room, Olivia held Jasper against her chest, silent tears streaming down her face. She knew she would have to face Nate's questions eventually, but how could she explain something that even she didn't fully understand? Nate's office at Blake Enterprises occupied the entire top floor of the skyscraper in downtown Manhattan. Normally, the panoramic view of the city inspired him, but that morning, he barely noticed the urban skyline. His eyes were fixed on a file folder on his desk. The words "Confidential DNA Test" printed in red letters on the cover. After the conversation with his mother, Nate had decided to investigate on his own. Using his influence, he managed to obtain a copy of the results of the prenatal DNA test Olivia had taken. Now, with the answers literally in his hands, he hesitated. A soft knock on the door brought him out of his thoughts. "Mr. Blake?" It was Amelia, his assistant. "Your wife is here to see you." Nate quickly put the folder away in a drawer. "Thank you, Amelia. You can send her in." Olivia entered, wearing an elegant gray suit, her hair tied up in a professional bun. Despite her composed appearance, Nate could see the tension in her eyes. "Nate," she began, her voice calm but firm, We need to talk about last night. He nodded, indicating a chair. Yes, we do. Liv, I'm sorry for the way I acted. It wasn't fair to you. Olivia sat down, crossing her legs. No, it wasn't. Nate, we've been married for 5 years. I thought we trusted each other. I trust you, Nate insisted, leaning forward. It's just, there are so many things that don't make sense. That woman's comment, Jasper's appearance, and you think that's reason enough to doubt me? Of us? Olivia asked, her voice trembling slightly. Nate hesitated, his hand unconsciously moving to the drawer where he had kept the folder. Liv, why didn't you show me the results of the DNA test? Olivia's face paled. How do you know about that? So you really did the test, Nate said, more to himself than to her. Why, Liv? Why hide it from me? Olivia stood up abruptly, walking over to the window. I didn't hide it, Nate. I just didn't think it was necessary to show you. I thought we trusted each other enough not to need proof. Nate watched her, noticing the tension in her shoulders and the way she avoided his gaze. Olivia, look at me. Is there something you're not telling me? She turned around slowly, tears shining in her eyes. Nate, there are things about my past, about our family, that are complicated. Things I don't fully understand myself. Nate felt his heart squeeze. What things, Liv? Please be honest with me. Olivia opened her mouth to speak, but was interrupted by Nate's phone ringing. He looked at the handset, recognizing his mother's number. Sorry, I have to take this, he said to Olivia, who nodded silently. Mom? Nate answered. Cordelia's voice sounded urgent. Nate, honey, you need to come home right away. There's something you and Olivia need to know. Something about our family, and about Olivia's past. Nate looked at his wife, who was watching him with a mixture of fear and resignation. We're on our way, he replied, hanging up the phone. Was that your mother? Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nate nodded. Yes, she wants us to come home. She says there's something we need to know. Olivia closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. Nate, before we go, there's something you need to know. Something about my family, about my father. Nate felt a shiver run down his spine. What is it, Liv? My father. Olivia hesitated, her voice trembling. He's not who I always thought he was, and that could explain a lot about Jasper. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with unspoken revelations and secrets about to be unearthed. Nate looked at the drawer where he had kept the DNA test results, wondering if the answers he was looking for were there or in the secrets his mother and wife were about to reveal. Come on, he finally said, holding out his hand to Olivia. I think it's time we face the truth, whatever it is. Together, they left the office, ready to face a past that threatened to redefine everything they thought they knew about themselves and their family. The Blake mansion seemed strangely silent when Nate and Olivia arrived. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the immaculate lawn, creating an almost surreal scene. Cordelia was waiting for them at the entrance, her face a mask of concern and determination. I'm glad you've arrived, she said, ushering them inside. There's a lot we need to discuss. In the family's mahogany office, Cordelia indicated that they should sit down. Nate noticed that his mother's hands were shaking slightly as she opened a drawer in the desk and took out an old wooden box. Before we begin, Cordelia said, her voice firm despite the obvious tension, I want you both to know that everything I'm about to reveal comes from a place of love. Love for our family, for our legacy. Nate felt Olivia squeeze his hand. He looked at her, noticing the fear in her eyes. Cordelia opened the box, revealing a series of yellowed letters and old photographs. Nate, darling, what do you know about your grandfather, Augustus Blake? Nate frowned, surprised by the question. Well, he founded Blake Enterprises. He was a pioneer in the industry, a respected man. Cordelia nodded slowly. Yes, he was all that. But there was much more to Augustus than the history books tell. She picked up a photograph and handed it to Nate. The picture showed a young man, clearly Augustus, next to a dark-skinned woman. They were both smiling, looking happy and in love. This is Evelyn Johnson, Cordelia explained. Augustus, great love, and his secret partner for over 2 decades. Olivia gasped, her eyes widening in understanding. Nate, on the other hand, looked confused. Mom, what are you saying? Grandpa was married to Grandma Eleanor. Cordelia sighed deeply. Yes, he was. But Augustus led a double life. Evelyn was more than a lover. She was his confidant, his business partner. And she hesitated, looking directly at Olivia. She was your grandmother, dear. The silence that followed was deafening. Nate looked at Olivia, who had tears in her eyes. Did you know that? He asked softly. Olivia shook her head. No, not everything. My father was always vague about our family history. He told me about Evelyn shortly before he died, but he never mentioned Augustus. Cordelia continued. Augustus loved Evelyn deeply, but times were different. An interracial relationship would have destroyed everything he had built, so they kept their love a secret. Evelyn had a son, her father, Olivia. Augustus recognized him privately, making sure he had a good education and opportunities, but he could never publicly assume his paternity. Nate felt his head spin at the revelations. So, Olivia and I, your second cousins, Cordelia confirmed. And Jasper, well, he carries on the genetic legacy of Augustus and Evelyn. Olivia sobbed, covering her face with her hands. I suspected, when I first saw Jasper, something in me knew, but I didn't want to believe it. Nate hugged her, his mind a storm of emotions. Anger at the lie, confusion about his own identity, relief at knowing that Olivia had never betrayed him. Why tell us this now? He asked his mother. Cordelia took another letter from the box. Because Augustus left specific instructions. He wanted the truth to be revealed when the first descendant of both sides of the family was born. He hoped it would finally unite the two parts of his legacy. Nate stood up abruptly, walking over to the window. All my life, everything I thought I knew about our family. Olivia approached him, touching his arm gently. Nate, I'm sorry. I should have been honest about my suspicions. He turned to her, his eyes softening. No, Liv. I'm the one who owes you an apology. I doubted you, our love. Cordelia watched the couple, a mixture of relief and concern on her face. There's more, she said softly. Augustus left a considerable part of his fortune to Evelyn's descendants, money that has been kept in a secret trust for decades. Nate and Olivia turned surprised. What does that mean for us now? Nate asked. Cordelia smiled sadly. It means that you have a choice to make. Reveal the truth to the world, uniting the two parts of the Blake family, or continue to keep the secret. The couple exchanged glances, the magnitude of the decision weighing heavily on them. We need to think, Olivia finally said. This doesn't just affect us, but Jasper and his future. Nate nodded, pulling Olivia close. We'll face this together, he promised. As a family, as the sun set outside, casting long shadows across the office, the three of them remained silent, each lost in thought about the past that had just been revealed, and the uncertain future that awaited them. The days that followed Cordelia's revelation were a whirlwind of emotions for Nate and Olivia. The Blake mansion, once a symbol of status and tradition, now seemed like a mausoleum of family secrets. The couple decided to isolate themselves temporarily, trying to understand and process everything they had discovered. One particularly tense afternoon, Nate found Olivia in Jasper's room. She was sitting in the rocking chair, cradling the sleeping baby, her eyes lost in distant thoughts. Hey, Nate said softly, leaning against the doorframe. How are you guys? Olivia looked up, a tired smile on her lips. We're fine. Jasper doesn't seem affected by all the drama, at least. Nate approached, kneeling beside the chair. He observed his son's face, noticing for the first time features he hadn't noticed before. The gentle curve of the nose, so similar to the old photos of Augustus, the skin tone that now made perfect sense. Liv, he began, hesitantly. I've been thinking about what we're going to do about all this. Olivia sighed, settling Jasper in her arms. Me too. It's an impossible decision, Nate. Revealing the truth could change everything. Our lives, the company, the Blake family legacy. Nate nodded, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I know, but keeping it a secret, wouldn't we be perpetuating the same lie that was imposed on us? Before Olivia could answer, the sound of a doorbell echoed through the house. Exchanging confused glances, the couple went downstairs, finding Cordelia at the front door, talking quietly to someone. Nate, Olivia, Cordelia called out, her voice tense. We have a visitor. To the couple's surprise, Vivian Caldwell entered the hall, her face a mask of determination. Sorry to intrude, Vivian said, her gaze alternating between Nate and Olivia. But after Jasper's party, I couldn't stop thinking. I thought it was time for some truths to come out. Nate stepped forward, protective. What truths, Mrs. Caldwell? Vivian sighed, pulling an envelope out of her purse. I was close friends with Evelyn Johnson. In fact, I was the one who introduced her to Augustus Blake all those years ago. Olivia gasped, pressing Jasper against her chest. You knew my grandmother? Vivian nodded, her eyes softening. Yes, dear. Evelyn was an extraordinary woman. Strong, intelligent, ahead of her time. She and Augustus, well, it was a love that defied all the conventions of the time. Nate led everyone into the living room, where they sat down, the tension palpable in the air. Why are you telling us this now? Nate asked, his voice a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Vivian opened the envelope, revealing a series of old letters. Because Evelyn entrusted me with these letters before she died. Letters from Augustus, detailing not only their love, but also plans for the future. Cordelia leaned forward, puzzled. What kind of plans? Augustus wanted to unite the two parts of his family, Vivian explained. He set up a secret fund, not just with money, but with shares in Blake Enterprises, shares that legally belonged to Evelyn's descendants. The silence that followed was deafening. Nate and Olivia exchanged astonished glances, while Cordelia seemed to struggle to keep her composure. That means, Olivia began, her voice trembling. It means that you, Olivia, and by extension Jasper, are majority shareholders in Blake Enterprises, Vivian concluded. Nate stood up abruptly, walking over to the window. His mind was spinning with the implications of this revelation. The entire empire that he thought was his by birthright actually belonged largely to his wife and son. Why would Augustus do that? He asked, his voice hoarse. Vivian smiled sadly. He hoped that one day, when the truth came out, it would force the two parts of the family to come together. It was his way of righting the wrongs of the past. Olivia approached Nate, touching his arm gently. Nate, this doesn't change anything between us. We're family. He turned, his eyes meeting hers. I know, Liv, but it changes everything else. How can we move forward knowing this? How can we lead the company with this secret? Cordelia stood up, her posture determined. Maybe it's time for the Blake family to face their past, to embrace their whole history, not just the part the world knows. Nate looked at his mother, then at Olivia and Jasper. The weight of the decision they had to make was immense. Revealing the truth could shake the foundations of Blake Enterprises and change the public perception of the family forever. But to keep it a secret, that would be living a lie, denying Jasper his true legacy. We need to think carefully about this, Nate finally said. It's not just about us. It's about Jasper's future, about the legacy we want to leave. Olivia nodded, hugging Nate. Together, she whispered. We'll face this together. As the sun set outside, casting long shadows across the room, the Blake family found themselves on the threshold of a new era, an era of truth, reconciliation, and, perhaps, redemption. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The past could no longer remain buried. The main office of Blake Enterprises buzzed with palpable tension. Nate, sitting at the head of the long meeting table, watched the anxious faces of the board members. Olivia stood next to him, her unusual presence at this type of meeting causing whispers and curious glances. Ladies and gentlemen, Nate began, his voice steady despite the internal turmoil. Thank you all for attending this extraordinary meeting. We have urgent matters to discuss that will affect the future of our company. A murmur ran through the room. Victor Holloway, the oldest member of the board, leaned forward. Nate, what's going on? There are rumors circulating. Nate exchanged a glance with Olivia, who nodded encouragingly. He took a deep breath before continuing. Recently, information has come to light about the history of our family and, by extension, this company, that can no longer be ignored. The silence that followed was almost palpable. Nate continued, detailing the history of Augustus and Evelyn, their secret relationship, and the existence of a hitherto unknown lineage of the Blake family. When he finished, the room erupted in excited voices. That's absurd. How can we be sure? This will change everything. Victor Holloway stood up, his voice overpowering the others. Nate, do you understand what you're doing? This could destroy everything we've built. Olivia, who had remained silent until then, stood up. Gentlemen, we understand the implications of this revelation, but we believe it's time for Blake Enterprises to embrace its entire history. And who are you to have an opinion on that? Asked a director. casting a disdainful glance at Olivia. Nate felt his anger rise, but Olivia put a hand on his arm, calming him down. "I'm Olivia Blake," she replied, her voice calm but firm. "Nate's wife, Jasper's mother, and, as we've just discovered, holder of most of the shares in this company." The chaos that followed was deafening. Cries of outrage, accusations of fraud, and demands for proof echoed around the room. Nate slammed the table, silencing everyone. "Enough. We have documents, DNA tests, and the word of reliable witnesses. The truth is undeniable." Victor, his face red with anger, pointed an accusing finger at the couple. "You're going to destroy Augustus' legacy, everything he worked for." Olivia stepped forward, her voice surprisingly firm. "No, Mr. Holloway. We are honoring Augustus' true wishes. He wanted the two parts of his family to be united one day. He wanted reparation." The room fell into a tense silence. Nate observed the faces around the table, some confused, others furious, a few thoughtful. "What exactly do you intend to do?" asked a younger director, her voice cautious. Nate exchanged a glance with Olivia before answering. "We intend to restructure the company's leadership. Olivia and I will lead together, bringing a fresh perspective and honoring both sides of our family legacy." "What about little Jasper?" Victor asked, his voice laden with sarcasm. "Is he going to lead the company from the cradle too?" Olivia narrowed her eyes, her voice icy. "Our son will grow up knowing all your history, Mr. Holloway. He'll be proud of both sides of his heritage." The tension in the room was palpable. Nate knew they were walking on dangerous ground. Years of prejudices and secrets would not be easily overcome. "Gentlemen, ladies," he said, his voice firm, "we understand that this is a shock, but we believe this is an opportunity for Blake Enterprises to reinvent itself, to be a leader not just in business, but in social responsibility and equality." A thoughtful silence fell over the room. Finally, the youngest director spoke again. "What if we refuse to accept this change?" Olivia stepped forward, her voice calm but determined. "Then we'll have to take more drastic measures. As the majority shareholder, I have the power to force these changes. But we would prefer everyone to embrace this new direction voluntarily." Victor Holloway stood up abruptly. "This is an outrage. I will not stay here to see the destruction of Augustus' legacy." With that, he stormed out of the room, followed by a few other council members. Nate and Olivia exchanged worried glances. The battle was far from over. "The meeting is adjourned for the day," Nate announced. "We ask that everyone reflect on what has been discussed. We'll have another meeting soon to discuss the next steps." As the remaining board members left, muttering amongst themselves, Nate turned to Olivia. "That was just the beginning, wasn't it?" Olivia nodded, interlacing her fingers with his. "Yes, but we'll face it together. For our family, for Jasper, and for Augustus' true legacy." As they left the meeting room, they both knew that the days ahead would be challenging. Blake Enterprises was on the verge of a transformation, and not everyone was ready to embrace it. But Nate and Olivia were determined to fight for a future that honored all of their past, no matter how difficult the road. The sun had barely risen when Nate was woken by the incessant ringing of his phone. Next to him, Olivia stirred, mumbling something unintelligible. He picked up the handset, frowning as he saw his press officer's name flashing on the screen. "Maxwell? What happened?" Nate asked, his voice still hoarse from sleep. "Nate, turn on the TV now." "Channel 5, Maxwell replied, his voice tense. With a growing sense of dread, Nate turned on the television in the bedroom, lowering the volume so as not to wake Jasper in the next room. What he saw made his blood run cold. Breaking news. Scandal rocks the Blake family. Illegitimate heir takes control of Blake Enterprises. Olivia, now fully awake, gasped as she saw the sensationalist headlines scrolling across the screen. Old photos of Augustus, mixed with recent images of Nate, Olivia, and even little Jasper, filled the screen. "How did it leak?" Olivia whispered, her voice trembling. Nate shook his head in disbelief. "I don't know, but I have an idea." On the screen, Victor Holloway appeared, his face a mask of feigned indignation. "It's an outrage. The Blake family has always been synonymous with integrity and tradition. This shocking revelation threatens everything Augustus has built." Olivia stood up abruptly, walking over to the window. Outside, she could see a crowd of reporters forming at the gates of the mansion. "Nate, what are we going to do?" she asked, her voice heavy with concern. Before he could answer, Jasper's cry echoed through the baby monitor. Olivia immediately headed to her son's room, while Nate continued to watch the media coverage, his face a mask of determination. Minutes later, with Jasper in her arms, Olivia returned to the room. He's restless. I think he can feel the tension in the air. Nate approached, hugging his family. Let's face this together, he said, his voice firm. It's time to tell our side of the story. In the hours that followed, the Blake mansion was transformed into a crisis operations center. Lawyers, press officers, and loyal board members came and went, all working frantically to control the damage. By mid-afternoon, Nate and Olivia were preparing for an impromptu press conference in the gardens of the mansion. Cordelia, who had arrived earlier, held Jasper, her eyes full of concern. Are you sure about this? She asked, settling the little one in her arms. Nate nodded, straightening his tie. We have no choice, Mom. If we don't tell our side of the story, others will do it for us. Olivia, dressed in an elegant navy blue suit, approached the mirror, checking her appearance one last time. I'm nervous, she admitted. What if they don't believe us? Nate turned to her, holding her hands. They will, because we're telling the truth. Augustus wanted this, Liv. He wanted your full story to be known one day. With one last look at Jasper, who was now sleeping peacefully in Cordelia's arms, the couple headed for the gardens. The buzz from the crowd of reporters grew when they appeared. Nate approached the microphone with Olivia by his side. He took a deep breath, looking directly at the cameras. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today, we'd like to share a story with you. A story of love, sacrifice, and, yes, secrets, but above all, a story of family. As Nate spoke, detailing the story of Augustus and Evelyn, the love that defied the conventions of the time, and Augustus' desire to one day unite the two parts of his family, Olivia watched the reporters' reactions. Some seemed skeptical, others intrigued, and some even moved. When it was Olivia's turn to speak, her voice was clear and firm. We didn't choose this situation, but we chose how to deal with it. We chose to honor Augustus' wish to unite his family. We chose to embrace all of our history, with its complexities and challenges. The questions that followed were intense, some hostile, others curious. Nate and Olivia answered with honesty and dignity, even when the questions became personal and uncomfortable. At the end of the press conference, exhausted but relieved, the couple went back inside the mansion. Cordelia was waiting for them, Jasper still asleep in her arms. You were wonderful, she said, tears in her eyes. Augustus would be proud. Nate picked Jasper up, looking into his son's innocent face. This is just the beginning, he said softly. We have a long way to go. Olivia joined them, enveloping Nate and Jasper in a hug, but we'll face it together as a family. As the sun set outside, casting a golden light over the gardens of the Blake mansion, the family gathered, united in their determination to face whatever the future brought. The media storm might continue outside, but within those walls, there was love, strength, and the promise of a new beginning. The weeks following the press conference were a whirlwind for the Blake family. The Blake Enterprises headquarters became a silent battleground, with employees divided between supporting the new direction of the company or resisting the changes. One particularly tense morning, Nate arrived at the office to find a chaotic scene. A group of employees, led by Victor Holloway, were gathered in the main lobby, protest signs in hand. Preserve the Blake legacy. No to usurpation. Out with the imposters. Nate felt his stomach turn as he read the messages. He was about to confront the group when he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Olivia, her face a mask of determination. Together, she said simply. They moved forward, and the buzz died down as the staff noticed their presence. Victor Holloway stepped forward, his face contorted into a sneer. Ah, if it isn't our new leaders, he sneered. Have you come to see how you're destroying the work of a lifetime? Nate was about to reply when Olivia stepped forward. Mr. Holloway, we understand your frustration. Change is difficult, but we're here to build bridges, not walls. A murmur went through the crowd. Victor seemed momentarily disconcerted by Olivia's calm. Nate seized the moment. All of you are a vital part of this company. Augustus' legacy isn't being destroyed. It's evolving. He wanted to unite his family, and that's what we're doing. A young employee raised her voice. What about our jobs? Will this change affect us? Olivia smiled gently. Your job is more important than ever. We're expanding, not downsizing. In fact, we have plans for new projects that will create more opportunities for everyone. The tension in the air began to visibly ease. Victor, realizing he was losing ground, tried one last provocation. What about little Jasper? Is he going to be our CEO at the age of 5? Nate felt his anger rising, but Olivia stopped him from reacting. She turned to Victor, her gaze firm. Mr. Holloway, our son will grow up knowing the value of hard work and integrity, values that Augustus cherished, values that I hope everyone here shares. The silence that followed was broken by a solitary cheer. It was Margaret Chen, one of the company's most respected directors. She approached Nate and Olivia. I worked with Augustus for decades, she said, her voice carrying the weight of experience. He always talked about a future where the company would embrace diversity and innovation. I think that future has arrived. Other employees began to join Margaret, some hesitant, others more enthusiastic. Victor and his staunchest followers retreated, clearly outnumbered. Nate and Olivia spent the next few hours talking to the employees, listening to their concerns and sharing their visions for the future of the company. By the end of the day, the mood at Blake Enterprises had changed dramatically. Back at the mansion, exhausted but hopeful, Nate and Olivia found Cordelia playing with Jasper in the garden. How was it? Cordelia asked. Noticing the couple's tired faces, Nate dropped into a chair, letting out a long sigh. Difficult but productive. I think we're finally making progress. Olivia picked Jasper up, kissing his forehead. We still have a long way to go. But today I felt like we were honoring Augustus' true wish. Cordelia smiled, her eyes shining with pride. You two are stronger together than you ever imagined. Augustus and Evelyn would be proud. Nate stood up, joining his family. You know, today I really felt their presence, as if they were guiding us. Olivia nodded, her eyes filling with tears. I felt it too, and for the first time since all this started, I really believe that we can make it work. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the garden, the Blake family stood together, contemplating the future. The adversities were still far from over, but at that moment, there was a sense of hope in the air, a hope that with love, determination, and the strength of their unified legacy, they could face whatever challenges the future brought. Jasper, oblivious to the concerns of the adults, let out a happy little laugh, as if to remind everyone that, in the end, love and family were what really mattered. And with that comforting thought, Nate and Olivia prepared to face another day in the journey of redefining the Blake legacy. 6 months had passed since the public revelation about the Blake family's past. Blake Enterprises had faced turbulence, but under Nate and Olivia's joint leadership, it was beginning to emerge stronger and more unified than ever. However, not everyone was happy with the company's new direction. It was an autumn morning when Nate received an alarming call from Margaret Chen. Nate, you need to come to the company immediately. Margaret's voice sounded urgent. Victor Holloway has called an emergency board meeting. He claims to have evidence that discredits Augustus and Evelyn's whole story. Nate's heart raced. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Olivia, who had overheard the conversation, was already getting ready. I'm coming with you, she said, her voice firm. We'll face this together. Leaving Jasper in Cordelia's care, the couple hurried to the headquarters of Blake Enterprises. When they arrived, they were greeted by a tense atmosphere and apprehensive looks from the employees. In the meeting room, Victor Holloway stood, a triumphant smile on his face. Next to him, to everyone's surprise, was an elderly woman who Nate immediately recognized from old photos. It was Vivian Caldwell. Ah, the Blakes have finally arrived, Victor sneered. Now we can start the show. Nate and Olivia took their seats, exchanging worried glances. Victor began, his voice laden with malice. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, over the last few months, we have been forced to accept a fantastic story about Augustus Blake's past, a story of forbidden love and secret heirs. Well, today I'm here to expose the truth behind that farce. He gestured to Vivian, who looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Caldwell here has a confession to make. Vivian stood up slowly, her eyes avoiding those of Nate and Olivia. I lied, she began, her voice trembling. Augustus and Evelyn never had a relationship. The letters, I forged them. A shocked murmur ran through the room. Nate felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath his feet. Olivia grabbed his hand, her eyes wide with disbelief. Victor smiled, triumphantly. Look at that. This whole story is nothing but an elaborate lie. Olivia has no claim on this company. And Jasper, well, he's certainly not a real Blake. Nate stood up abruptly, his voice shaking with anger. This is absurd. We have proof. DNA tests. Tests that can be easily manipulated, Victor interrupted, especially when you have the resources of Blake Enterprises at your disposal. The room descended into a chaos of excited voices and accusations. Olivia, however, remained strangely calm. She stood up slowly, her eyes fixed on Vivian. Mrs. Caldwell, she said, her voice soft but firm. Look into my eyes and repeat what you've just said. Vivian hesitated, her gaze meeting Olivia's. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Vivian began, but then her shoulders slumped. I can't do this. I can't go on with this lie. Victor was livid. What are you doing? Stick to the plan. But Vivian turned to the council, tears in her eyes. Forgive me. Victor threatened me. He said he would destroy my family's reputation if I didn't cooperate. But the truth is that every word he said about Augustus and Evelyn is true. I witnessed their love. I saw the suffering caused by their forced separation. The room fell absolutely silent. Victor, realizing he had lost, tried to run away, but was stopped by security guards that Margaret Chen had discreetly positioned. Nate approached Vivian, his voice gentle. Why, Mrs. Caldwell, why did you agree to take part in this plan? Vivian sobbed. My granddaughter. She's ill. Victor promised to pay for her treatment if I cooperated. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have faltered. Olivia put a comforting hand on Vivian's shoulder. It's all right. We understand. And don't worry about your granddaughter. Blake Enterprises will take care of all the medical expenses. Margaret Chen stood up, her voice carrying the authority of years of experience. I think it's clear to all of us that Victor Holloway has tried to manipulate this situation for his own benefit. I propose his immediate removal from the board and a full investigation into his activities in the company. One by one, the board members agreed. Victor was escorted out, shouting threats and accusations. When the dust cleared, Nate and Olivia found themselves in the center of a circle of support. Margaret and other board members and staff came forward to express their loyalty and admiration for the way the couple had handled the situation. Later, back at the mansion, Nate and Olivia reflected on the day's events while watching Jasper play in the garden. That was close. Nate sighed, still shaken. Olivia nodded, entwining her fingers with his. But we made it, and I think we can finally look to the future without fear of the past. Nate smiled, pulling her close. You're right. Augustus and Evelyn would be proud. We've built the bridge they've always dreamed of. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the Blake family, there was a sense of peace and hope in the air. Augustus and Evelyn's legacy was secure, and the future, although still uncertain, looked brighter than ever. A year had passed since the dramatic confrontation in the Blake Enterprises boardroom. Autumn had arrived again, painting the trees around the Blake mansion in shades of red and gold. Inside the house, an atmosphere of expectation hung in the air. Nate was adjusting his tie in front of the mirror, his eyes reflecting a mixture of nervousness and determination. Olivia entered the room, Jasper in her arms, now a lively little boy of almost 2. Ready for the big day? Olivia asked, smiling at her husband through her reflection. Nate turned around, taking Jasper in his arms and planting a kiss on his son's forehead. As ready as I can be. It's a big step. Today was the day that Blake Enterprises would officially inaugurate its new headquarters. Not just a new building, but a symbol of the company's rebirth under the joint leadership of Nate and Olivia. The family descended the stairs, meeting Cordelia in the foyer. She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. You 3 look wonderful. Augustus and Evelyn would be so proud. The drive to the city center was silent, everyone lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, they were greeted by a crowd of employees, journalists, and onlookers. The new Blake Enterprises building was an architectural masterpiece. Its glass and steel facade stood majestically against the autumn sky. But what really caught the eye was the huge mural at the main entrance. The mural told the story of the Blake family in vibrant images. Augustus and Eleanor on one side, Augustus and Evelyn on the other, and in the center, a representation of Nate, Olivia, and Jasper, symbolizing the union of the 2 bloodlines. Nate took the podium, with Olivia by his side. The crowd fell silent, eager to hear his words. Welcome, Nate began, his voice strong and clear. Today we're not just inaugurating a new building. We're celebrating a new chapter in the history of Blake Enterprises and the Blake family. Olivia continued. This building is a testament to the power of truth, love, and reconciliation. It represents not only our past, but our commitment to a more inclusive and just future. Nate gestured towards the mural. Augustus Blake dreamed of the day when his family would be united. Today, we realize that dream, but we don't stop there. As of today, Blake Enterprises is committed to being a force for positive change in our community and beyond. Olivia took the floor. We are launching the Evelyn Johnson Foundation, dedicated to supporting students from underprivileged communities and promoting diversity in the corporate world. In addition, we are implementing new equality and inclusion policies at all levels of the company. The crowd erupted in applause. Among the faces in the crowd, Nate and Olivia recognized Margaret Chen, smiling proudly, and even Vivian Caldwell, who waved shyly. After the speech, while greeting staff and guests, Nate and Olivia were approached by a young reporter. Mr. and Mrs. Blake, after everything you've been through, what would you say you've learned? Nate and Olivia exchanged glances, a shared smile passing between them. We've learned that true legacy isn't made of money or power, Nate began, but of love, truth, and the courage to face the past, Olivia added. The reporter smiled. And what about little Jasper? What do you hope for his future? Nate looked at his son, who was playing happily in Cordelia's arms. We hope that Jasper grows up knowing that he is loved, that his story is special, and that he has the power to make a difference in the world. Olivia nodded. We want him to understand that his heritage is a strength, not a burden, that he can build bridges where others see only walls. Later, when the festivities were over and the family returned to the mansion, Nate and Olivia found themselves in Augustus' old office. The walls, once decorated only with photos of Augustus and Eleanor, now also displayed images of Evelyn, and in the center, a recent photo of the whole family. We did it, didn't we? Olivia whispered, leaning her head on Nate's shoulder. Nate hugged her, his eyes roaming over the photos. Yes, we did it. And this is just the beginning. From upstairs, the sound of Jasper's laughter echoed, a cheerful reminder of the future that awaited them. You know, Nate said, a smile playing on his lips. I think I finally understand what Augustus meant by a legacy greater than ourselves. Olivia smiled, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. A legacy of love, truth, and unity. As the sun set outside, casting a golden glow through the office windows, Nate and Olivia stood in each other's arms, contemplating the future. The road had not been easy, but each challenge had made them stronger, more united. The Blake family story would continue, with new chapters waiting to be written. But now, with the truth revealed and the past reconciled, the future seemed to shine with endless possibilities. And at the center of it all was love, the love that had brought Augustus and Evelyn together, the love that had guided Nate and Olivia through the storms, and the love that now lit the way for Jasper and future generations of Blakes. Augustus and Evelyn's legacy was alive, not just in the halls of Blake Enterprises, but in the hearts of all those their story had touched. And so, with hope in their hearts and determination in their eyes, the Blake family prepared to face any challenge the future might bring, united by the power of love and truth. If you were to discover a family secret that could completely change your identity and position in society, would you choose to reveal the truth, knowing that this could cause conflict and instability? Or would you keep the secret to preserve the status quo? What would be the ethical and emotional consequences of your decision? Leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.